Hey, Yiska.
Yo.
Should Overwatch Esports go back to hero bans?
That's once again a statement that needs a lot of clarifications. And the back portion especially is an interesting one because the system that we had in Overwatch, it's not technically called bans, but like it was kind of bans, right? If we're being honest, it basically banned heroes of what it did instead was call it hero pools. We took a perfectly good term that actually meant something else already, and then like completely reframed it to the point of like being completely the other thing, because hero pools was like, these are the heroes that can not be used, while hero pools is ordinarily the idea of this player can play this hero or these types of heroes. So completely different thing. We had a completely cute, like good, well-working term, and then we just like repurposed it for no reason, for a very bad idea as well.
It's hero bands with a Halloween mask on is what we're going to say.
Pretty much, yes.
So we'll start real simple for anyone who's uninitiated in what hero bans actually are. What is a hero ban system?
Right. So hero bans theoretically are the banning of one or X amount of heroes from active play. Right. Now, there are a wide variety of systems in which hero bans can work. You can start and say, maybe we, between two teams, come up with one hero to ban for the remainder of the match. That would be a pretty soft one, right? Then there are systems that are very restrictive, where you could say only these 6 heroes are now allowed, or 5, and therefore it enforces a mirror matchup. Less fun, right?
Sure.
And whatever comes out is a statement, or how you want to frame those hero bans is a statement towards what kind of goals you want to pursue. How much agency do you want your competitors to have in the outcomes of those bans and how the match is played? How much what do you want to dictate from above as like the developer, game theory giving gods of like trying to give you the rules to play by, right? And it really depends on taste. It depends on the outcome that you want to facilitate. And I think generally speaking, there are two sides to consider here, right? This is the age-old thing, okay, Elliot? We're once again in the realm of chaos versus order, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
We're in the realm of patchwork versus perfection. And then, with academic words, heuristics against specifics, right? Rules of thumb against like hard practice strategies, where it's like everyone knows exactly how they want to go and like everything runs on rails.
Yeah.
And both of those are fine to love. You just got to figure out when it's best to facilitate either. And that has to be adjusted to the system that hero bans are existing in, right? Because meta is a gamble. But meta is not just an expression of the hero balance that is present. It is also an expression of the social dynamics of the scene. Are scrim bots shared among competitors? Not that like cool or competitive integrity like abiding, but it's also sad reality that sometimes happens, right? Is there time to come up with very elaborate strategies, right? I'm thinking of the Gladiators play on King's Row, where they pretend they're doing this whole rotation with goats, and then Shofor is in base, switches to Widow, and gets a double kill headshot, right? You would probably not be able to as often come up with these strategies if you had hard hero bans, because if someone just bans hero like Widow against you, that's probably less likely to happen. So you wanna determine, do you like the cheese? Do you like the predetermined outcomes? What kind of teams do you want to reliably have win? Do you want to increase the likelihood that dominant teams stay dominant? Do you want to increase the novelty of the match type of strategies in the matches that you're seeing? And based on that, you have to decide what kind of a hero ban system you want, and also based on the competitive format going forward.
Sure.
Now, we did have a hero pool system, right? Do you remember what the hero pools was like back in season 3? I think.
Yeah, remember vaguely what it was like. I just remember everyone complaining. It's all
Yes.
I remember. About the best players not being able to play their best heroes generally.
Right.
Certain things got banned. So it's worth pointing out that the hero ban system that the Overwatch League had wasn't very good and was pretty much universally unpopular and panned. I don't think I ever met anyone who was actually a fan of the way that system used to work. So why don't we kind of go into why the hero pool system, banning any other name, was introduced the way it was, and kind of why it was so unpopular and why it was kind of bad for the league at the time.
Right. So we have to go into the magical world of goats again, right?
Sure. My favorite place.
It's a world where for over 6 months, I think probably almost a year, the composition of 3 tanks, 3 supports was played.
Yeah.
And for a lot of it, it was exactly the same 6 heroes. Eventually, we had some meta variation with Sombra goats, but basically, it was a very, very hard meta to get rid of until it wasn't. Until in season 3, there was actually a team that was able to beat everyone else. The Shanghai Dragons was their team name, and they beat it with triple DPS. And to this day, Goats coaches will tell you that they probably just misplayed, and Goats was still the strongest. It's a hard question to ask, right? But or answer. But I will say, once again, we're back in academic terms, okay?
Okay.
We have the concept. We have the concept called the Nash equilibrium. The Nash equilibrium is the state of game strategies where both competitors could not do anything else in order to improve their chances of winning. Basically, they solved the game. Okay.
Okay.
Goats wasn't it. Goats was not that guy. Okay. They thought it was him. It wasn't. Okay. Shanghai Dragons proved that to a point. I think eventually, also esports history easily proves that. If we look at Brood War, for years something could be established truth, and then one guy comes around, introduces another idea, just performs it to perfection, and the meta changes completely because everyone else learns from them, right?
Sure.
Now, Ghost was very strong. It was also repeatedly hit by balance patches or tried to be knocked out of meta, but the synergistic effects and also people increasingly getting better at those compositions was very hard to get over the hump of trying to come up with something that was better than Goats. Because keep in mind, you're not just playing against the established meta state, so to speak, or the balanced state, like how good are heroes in a universal truth machine. You're also playing against the social stigma of, wait, you're trying to do what against us? This is not practice for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to scrim you. So eventually, I assume, and this is here I'm being cynical, but I don't think it's an overreach in how we interpret that decision, is if you have to design Overwatch League Season 3, keep in mind, we want to go onto the road. We want to, be in front of audiences, and we want to show the best Overwatch there is, while the game is not changing at all. You have to come up with systems that facilitate that. Now, at the time, had you told someone we're doing hero bans and the competitors pick, let's say, 4 heroes that are banned each match, they would have ripped your head off. And maybe rightfully so. Because you are in a world where the London Spitfire has to travel around the globe 4 times during the season in order to get to all the event locations. Practice is not going to be great. Now you're telling them that essentially their practice has to be a lot different and complicated because they cannot pre-plan their strategies. They have to come up with all those new strategies at any given point, right? But the problem is such a systemic change that will absolutely bring about a different type of skill. Like, players that are very good at flexibility are much more desirable now. People that are able to come up with new solutions to unique problems, but do not possess the ability to play, practiced strategies to perfection. Now we're filtering for very different player types, right? I would argue to a degree we saw that come to a head in Overwatch League Season 6. I would say Atlanta Reign, much better at perfecting a meta. Florida Mayhem, much better to playing like the chaos and coming up with solutions that are going to give them a small edge because they are better at flexibility. So they come up with hero pools, and it's a stagnant system of like 2 weeks. And how do they do that? They predetermine like sort of the odds of certain heroes being banned. Based on play rate, they put a different amount of lotto tickets into a bowl, and then a cat or sideshow or whatever pulls out 4 heroes, 2 DPS, 1 tank, 1 support, and tells us this is banned for the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks later on, right?
Yeah.
2 weeks was wild. Everyone was just tilting, right? Like everyone, first week is just like, what is going on? Like this is complete. It's much more severe than arguably any meta switch ever has been, right? Because it's like if you hit actually the big meta juggernauts, you cannot even use them for transitioning and trying to figure out why they are better, right? Like you're starting from a new starting point. You have nothing that you can trust, basically, right? So the first week is complete shambles. And then by the second week, you can hope that somehow someone has figured out something. If we had the 4 weeks, at the end of 4 weeks, because also of the practice load and whatever, we're all playing the same thing again. Is that desirable? Maybe not. But the reason I argue, they introduced that is to elongate the content that we got out of Overwatch 1. Because we didn't receive any new heroes. The last one was Echo, right? Sure. We weren't able to introduce any new novelty into this game. And ProPlay had just demonstrated that shortly before the most important Overwatch League season ever, before the pandemic was known to be around, right? But theoretically, the principled moment of Overwatch League should have happened in Season 3 when we go on the road and prove to the world that homestands can work. And therefore, the game has to look the best it can be, okay? It's in a tuck, and it's a tuxedo. It's like it practiced violin and whatnot, right? It's ready to perform in front of the family. And, of course, it never happened that way because the world closed down, unfortunately. But, like, if you're the league, I kind of understand why you had to sort of try to come up with a solution. It wasn't a bad try. I think it was quite clever in the way also how the bans were done. It's just for the time being, it might have been even a good thing. But I feel like the path of technology has led us to a point in time right now in Overwatch where we can entertain very different hero ban systems. It wasn't fun. People complained a lot. When we got rid of it in Season 5, that was a huge sigh of relief, right? But also, arguably, the fact that we got rid of it with Overwatch 2 coming in sort of illustrates that the point that it was introduced for novelty reasons sort of valid. Because now you don't need it any longer. You're getting new heroes every second season, in the beginning, even every season. So you don't need the novelty injection, or you don't expect players to only stick to one composition. Now, haha, joke's on you. We had summer drive for like at least half the season this year. But sometimes it's also just down to one team being so dominant and just, once again, meta is a gamble, play the odds, it's a social construct. Okay. Yeah. More so than an expression of the actual meta state, right? Or the balance state.
So when it comes to like the system that the Overwatch League had, obviously a hero ban system is champions, obviously, in League of Legends, but League of Legends has a champion ban system where, I mean, obviously you're kind of comparing oranges to apples because League of Legends have so many champions that you can play as, and Overwatch is significantly less. But why shouldn't you be able to carry that kind of success over from a hero ban system to Overwatch? Why wouldn't it work? Or can it?
So I think if we were to look at how exactly League does it, or Dota, I think like they just need much more bans to make it work, right? They have a very intricate system of like pick, ban, or whatever it is during the TI. And keep in mind, Dota has 124 heroes.
Yeah.
League has a little bit more.
Yeah. It is
Overwatch
apples to
is-
oranges. It is apples to oranges
It's very different, and you have hard-coded roles, right? Like it's
for sure.
yes, in League, you have like certain heroes that usually played in the jungle, but not only, right? So like sometimes you pick a hero and you actually don't know directly in which lane they're going, and that's fun because even increases the amount of 124 heroes. When you pick Illari, you cannot put her on support. That's on DPS.
Yeah.
That's your support hero now, right? So
Well, some people play it like a DPS, but yeah.
Yeah, it's true. But with Rollock, that we basically signed that off, right? As like hard coded into the game, and now we have to deal with that, and therefore that also changes the dynamics in a very big way. Now, it's definitely a good question. What kind of a system we should look at, and then for that I would refer to here. We put the link up of our discussion with pro players / coaches on hero bans. Jake presented his hero points ban system, and that was kind of interesting because it's not that heavy-handed.
Sure.
Okay, so the hero ban that Jake suggested was sort of smart because there are certain things that you want to facilitate, and there are certain things that you want to discourage. One thing that you absolutely have to discourage is that the game gets longer. You want this to go over as soon as possible, right?
Yeah.
What Jake suggested is very smart, which is you submit your bans, which is 1 hero ban per team per map. Okay.
Yeah.
So the teams already in the Overwatch League, at least during the regular season, know the maps.
Sure.
Later on, they have to, like, the loser chooses out of the map pool of maps for the specific type. It wouldn't be too hard to say, like, we'll ban, like, here's all maps that we're playing. Tell us which hero you want to ban for that particular team. It would be a little time intensive for the teams, but the way you could present it on broadcast is just matter of factly, this team picked this, therefore like both teams pre-decided on these heroes being banned, and sometimes that will turn out to be the same hero because like it's blind picked into each other, and that therefore facilitates a much more dynamic and time reserving or conserving solution. Now, the smart adaptation that Jake has taken here was done in the service of making the game more like the solo queue player would find it.
Okay.
Once again, back to the realm of order, to the realm of chaos, to the realm of perfection and patchwork. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not know what kind of compositions you can run, and I think very quickly a meta would develop where very often you would ban the tank, because the tank is very often in many meta states the archetype forcing component. So if you ban Winston, yes, they can still play ball dive or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just in very many meta states, that's not as desirable. Like folks will then go to the next best solution, which is a different archetype, right?
Yeah.
You ban Rhine, there's no real hero that could slot exactly in there. Like Ram, not really. Yeah. Like, yes, there are alternatives for the archetype, but it's a very different flavor. And it's such a different flavor that it actually historically would change the relative strength of those teams, right? Like how they presented themselves. I would say London Spitfire is probably one of the best Rhine Rush teams of all time. If you ban Rhine, I'm not confident they can do it on Ramatra.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So you could argue, for some teams it's pretty heavy-handed because you would never see Hardy on Rhine. Well, yes, maybe that would filter out teams like London Spitfire, or they have to develop one other pocket strategy where they're very strong on.
Yeah.
That could be fun, right? So that 1 hero ban per map would also allow you to adjust to the relative map types, right? So it's not a great It's not a great example anymore, but you used to think that Rush wasn't that good on Gibraltar because like Rush can't fly. And then they learned that Symmetra gives wings. It's sort of like the Red Bull of Overwatch. And now they're suddenly teleporting like through several different levels of the map, and therefore it changes. But based on map type, you can definitely ban with that in mind, and also look at teams and figure out those strategies. Now, this is only to a degree predictable to the opponent what the other will ban, right? Maybe you can bait it even, and there's a skill in that. Oh, maybe we're baiting them into betting Ryan against us, but actually we have this. We want them to ban Ryan because actually our best strength is this and this.
Yeah.
But the dynamics of those bans would change it to a point where, you know, those hard, cheesy meta strats that just like rely on weeks and weeks of honing the one skill, the one comp, would probably disappear.
Yeah.
It is very unlikely that teams in their pursuit of the Nash equilibrium would arrive at one single meta state where everyone bans the same hero every game. It's sort of like handshake agreements, like we're getting rid of that. Unless, and this is where a thing where archetypically in MOBAs, bans help with too, unless the balance state of the game is so messed up that you need to waste bans on specific heroes. Because if we're being honest, in MOBAs, very often it is the case that the ban system is actually not an expression of meta. It's an expression of like the developer messing up the bustedness of a hero, right? Clean Overwatch. Now, so like you have less heroes, therefore you have more time to concentrate on the individual hero. Therefore, there's a better chance for you to find a solution for that in a timely manner. So one hero could work.
So could we put this into a scenario where, say, in the grand finals of the Overwatch League just gone, is there someone in the current meta that could be banned that would change the result and Florida Mayhem don't win?
Florida Mayhem probably not. I'll be honest. But if Atlanta Reign made it to the finals and you banned Sombra, it's a little different suddenly.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And is there an argument for, do you even want that? Do you want, because we said at the beginning, like you want to, generally people want to see players playing who they're good at, right? But
yes,
hero bans kind of stop that, but then it means players have to branch out and there's more kind of variety. It's a tricky one.
Right. And I'll also be honest, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, but we really have to adapt to the new system that we're getting, because there's absolutely a reality where just by the nature of what kind of competitive format we get, the game looks completely different. The players are completely different. The types of plays you see are completely different. The types of metas you see are completely different. Suddenly we do not need hero bans anymore.
Yeah.
The specific need or the specific system that Jake designed very much takes realities of the Overwatch League in mind. My prescription would be put the new system in place, see how it plays, and then, based on the undesirable gameplay that you see, rethink what kind of hero bans you want to have. We could be in a very different competitive format, and therefore we would have to very much find out once again what Overwatch is even like, and meet her again, and then tell her, these are our wedding vows. Here, please sign the waiver, right? In how we want to have this expressed and what is fun, right? And that, the jury's still out on that. But the general concept of hero bans should not be demonized or welcomed. It should be a tool in our toolkit and how to solve problems of fun, of taste, of competitive integrity, right? Of balance, sometimes, hopefully not. But it's a useful tool that has done a lot for other esports, and that hopefully also is one that we will consider if it could be fruitful in the future.
So yeah, there's our Yiska and ours thoughts on hero bans, or at least hero bans as we understand them in the Overwatch League and how they might work in other esports. let us know what you think down in the comments. Do you think hero bands would be a good idea to bring them back? Were you a fan of were you the one fan of the old system back when it was there? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. And if there's anything that you want us to discuss as we ask Yiska anything about the Overwatch League and the Overwatch game in general, again, let us know down in the comments. But Yiska, as always, thanks for guiding us through another weird and wonderful topic around the Overwatch League.
Thanks for asking the questions.
All good. See you next time.